Okay, we're live. Welcome to Three Blondes, One Battle. How are you, Bobby?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Oh, technology. Gotta love it. So
You do. It's a
poor
relationship,
Bobby was trying to like get her mic to connect for like, I don't even know, 10 minutes. And then we're like, let's just try it on Zoom. And it worked immediately. So anyway, super
Yeah.
weird. So we are here to talk about I was thinking just the topic, and the reason I thought of this topic about just mindset and how
Mhm.
heading into the holidays, kind of thinking ahead and thinking how you can make it the least amount. I mean, there's always going to be stress heading into the holidays. I mean, we are what, 90, can you believe we're like 97 days out from
I think,
Christmas?
yeah.
That's
I can't even think about it. I feel like
I
this
mean,
movie started.
it's like laughable.
Yeah.
But I think the reason that it was brought up was I was chatting with a person that I don't really know that well. I met him. He was doing some work outside my house, and I just immediately felt a connection, almost like God telling me, like, find out more. I don't know. So I invited him to church. He said no every week so far. It's been months. And sometimes he just falls off the face of the planet. And so we had a discussion recently, and it was all about his mind, dude. Like him telling himself that it's just everything sucks, there's nothing to be happy about. There's nothing like, and he's not even managing an autoimmune disease. He's got a great job. Granted, he doesn't say no. You need to say no. If you work for yourself, say no to people. Don't be working, 20-hour days. I don't understand that. But
Mhm.
it just brought to mind the power of what you say about yourself, and how if you say it's going to suck and you tell yourself, "Oh, I hate the holidays. Oh, I can't. Oh, what am I going to do when I see my family?" It's probably going to suck.
Yeah. It's true. It's so true. I'm really heavily into mindset. So I really like this topic just because you kind of, living with an autoimmune disease. And I met so many, and so many different types of mindsets. And it's true. Like the things that you do think, you will reciprocate in your actions. And the hardest thing that I tell people is becoming self-aware. That's the hardest step, is being self-aware of what you're doing. But a lot of
Mhm.
people are like, well, how do I get there? And my biggest tip is to start paying attention to the uncomfortable. So when you start feeling uncomfortable about something, why are you feeling uncomfortable? And a lot of it really originates back to, the way that we're raised, but the things that hard times, it makes a big impact in the way that who we become, right? And
Mhm.
this month is a big, huge self awareness month of suicide prevention, and it just goes heavily more into mindset. And it really doesn't. It impacts everybody. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter who you are, how much money you have.
Mhm.
It really comes down to the way that you think and this expectation that we put on ourselves, that most of the time we're doing it to ourselves because we're thinking, this person wants us to do this and we don't feel like we can live up to that expectation. So we create this in our mind without really not knowing concrete fact from that person, because actions speak louder than words, right? You can say
Mhm.
all this stuff, but you watch people's actions, then you're like, well, they say this, but their actions are saying something else. And so I feel like that's where it comes down to, is, everything, that the negative side of life, right? The hard things of life. And the one thing that, and this is even before, diving more into my faith, but the fact that happiness isn't something that just happens. Like
No.
you, happiness, you create the joy in your life. Like there's always going to be bad things. There's always going to be, you
Struggles.
know, full
Mhm.
struggles, things that you can't control. And it comes
Mhm.
from things that we have no control over. And I feel when it comes to that, it's hard for so many to separate that. And I was in that
Mhm.
place. But I think when it comes to mindset wise, what, we're getting into is how do you even start? Like, how do you start
Mhm.
shifting? How do you even um, make the steps? You know?
Yeah, and I do think that you're in control of, you're basically, this is what I told this person. Figure out why do you think everything sucks right now? Why do you think that you're stuck? Why do you basically why are you just existing in the day? Let's say, you're managing MS, and you everything just sucks. Why? Like, answer the question, why? And you have to understand why you're saying that to yourself every single day. What would you choose to do differently? How would you choose to act differently? What do you desire? I think that that's the thing, that people, they put these words out there, but they don't really know what they want or what they desire. And when it comes to autoimmune, conditions, or things that hamper, let's say, like your mobility, or you're limited to certain things that you can't do, and now you feel like you're stuck, let's say, but behind closed doors, or you're stuck, but you're really not. There's ways. I think that if you can be honest with yourself, there's still ways that you can get out
Mhm.
there, go do it. It just might not look the same. And so it's uncomfortable. It's
That's
like you said, it's going back to being comfortable with the uncomfortable, and it sucks. And so maybe once a week, try to get uncomfortable, not once a day. Okay. Like, how about every Thursday or every Sunday? Most people don't do it right in the afternoons and nights, but like Sunday morning, how about you say, like, hey, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go to church, or that's just an example, or I'm going to
yeah.
go to the farmer's market every morning, every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, even though it'll be uncomfortable, even though I won't be able to walk well, but it'll get me out of the house. And I think the more you do things like that, the more you realize, like, oh, like, geez, I actually had, like, there were really nice people there. And I really, like, enjoyed being out of the house, and it creates more of a positive kind of atmosphere in your limited life. Don't you
Yeah.
agree?
Oh yeah. And the thing is too, getting uncomfortable, you know, a lot of it, I learn a lot about, I love learning history, okay? Especially war times, okay? And not just like war in general, but the people that are affected by the war, okay?
Mhm.
And it's really amazing our the mindset of what people went through, say during World War II, okay? The mindset that they had, and especially when so many were sending their children off to the UK, and we're talking babies, 3 year olds, 4 year olds, and these kids not realizing why their parents were so sad, yet they were on the trains being headed off, right? And seeing the struggle that you go through. So misery will always find misery. It's
Mhm.
easy to let a negative impact a judgment against someone else. So that comparison game. And today we live in a society of we get to see in a look of everywhere in the world. We have so much information at our
Mhm.
fingertips, we don't know what to do with it. So it looking at other people's lives, things that they're sharing, and social media is a highlight reel. Okay. And people will look at people like, well, there's nothing going on in their life. Like, I'm dealing with this. And it's hard for people to understand that social media is an avenue for, I would say, a good chunk of people, of bringing hope, bringing
Mhm.
a smile, even though they're going through hard times, myself included. I do this, but being able to be surrounded by others who are doing things that you want to do, even though you're so scared to do it, I feel like that's such a great step. Putting yourself in rooms with others who are doing, taking action in some way in their life that inspires you, be around it. It doesn't mean that
Mhm.
you have to constantly like take action on it. It's just being surrounded by it, hearing the words, observing people's actions, and being able to connect the two.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just go back to biblically, Proverbs 18:21, you have the power of life and death in every word you speak, like that. That's coming from our creator. That's coming that so if he's saying that, it's not just, woo woo. Like what you say about yourself or about your life is what your life is going to be.
That's so, like, I feel like you can look at it like for yourself, the choices that you've made in your life years ago, and seeing the gratification that happened from it, but also the decline of what that decision was. With a decision, there's always a pro and a con. Always. It
Mhm.
just means like which one's going to be more than the other, right? And I 100% agree with that. Even if you don't have faith or whatnot, just take a look at your life, because you'll see that it's so true. Like your words, your actions hold everything within your life, even though bad things happen to people every single day. Other people do bad things to people all the time. With us, with our bodies hating our good parts of our bodies and destroying it, like it can feel like a lot of people, it feels like a death sentence, especially newly diagnosed. Even people like I've met who from social media, and they've had it for years, and they're still in the same position where they were from day one. And so it's very
Mhm.
fascinating to see, but their life, the life that they're in, not the life that they're portraying online, it makes the biggest is making the biggest impact.
Yeah, I think especially for you know what, I was saying if I was newly diagnosed right now, like oh my gosh, I feel like I would never have a symptom. I feel like there's so much information out there to follow. There's so many people doing it already that you could just lock arms with because of social media and because of well, really because of social. Like you could literally surround yourself with all of these people managing MS with zero symptoms and just find out what they're doing and mimic it. Like and I think that that's the beauty of being diagnosed these days is you've got no excuse to be scared. Okay, fine. If you're googling MS, like you might be a little scared, but Google like alternative medicine and MS or how to beat MS. See what pops up. You'll find these people. Naturopathic doctors MS. Like think outside of the box and don't think about like it's going to be a progressive, like it's going to get worse and where I'm going to be in a wheelchair. Like don't you that is so 20 years ago. Like we there is so much more hope when it comes to this diagnosis that you got to get out of that mindset that it's just going to get worse and worse, because that's not the reality. That's not how it has to go. But it will go that way if you keep telling yourself that.
I think
So,
that point, feeling that way, there is such a big mindset side to being diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And, depending on your symptoms of, the first initial attacks, everybody's different what it is.
mhm,
And that's why so many people are diagnosed, decades. It's taken them decades because, one doctor saying MS, another one saying no, and insurance isn't agreeing with it. And so it's this
mhm.
mindset battle that, something's wrong. And, and this is what, I have like I believe there is a purpose for modern day medicine. I believe there's a purpose for functional medicine. And I feel like what you need to do with like the mindset that you're in, I am pretty much smack dab in the middle between the two. I use both, but the biggest thing, I had a conversation with someone when it came from sugars. We talked about sugars on here before, and I was talking to him and I was like, even if someone's not diagnosed with autoimmune disease, when you consume too much of something, if it's like fats, to carbohydrates, to sugars, to too much salt, your body's going to let you know, man, like I feel like garbage. I don't feel good. And so when you
Mhm.
start creating that balance, kind of minimizing, not restricting, because we do need sugar, we do, but it's not like the high processed sugars all the time. We need fruit fructose sugar, right? So anyways, I was like, have you ever noticed when you start balancing everything out, you feel better? And so I'm like, that's the thing. Like, we're supposed to be taking initiative in our life. Our life is not supposed to be put into doctors' hands. Like, yes, if
Mhm.
it's a life-saving surgery, that's totally different. But our day-to-day life, what we're doing, the way that we're
Mhm.
thinking, the way that we're taking care of ourselves, the way that we show up for ourselves. And it starts with our mindset. Like, we have
Mhm.
to depend on, well, I'm motivated today, so I'm going to do something. Well, maybe you're motivated only one time every 4 weeks. Like, you can't
Yeah.
depend on that. You can't. Like, what I do, what I have to grab at is what I don't want to deal with anymore. Like, I am tired of feeling this way. And it's a constant reminder for myself because I don't want to feel like that. So I'm going to keep doing and making these choices. It's not restrictive. Restrictive is thinking, okay, well, I want to look like this, a outcome, not longevity, long term. This outcome, I want to be at this size. So I'm going to restrict all of this food in order to get to this side. But what happens when you get to that side? Okay, I'm going to go back to what I was doing. Well, then you're going to yo-yo and go all the way back because your mindset didn't adapt along the way because you were thinking, okay, I just want to be in this size versus why do I want to be in this size? Like, what is that emotion behind it? And, I tell people all the time, don't always look for like the factual things. You have to understand the emotional ties to it. That's where your mindset comes into play. Because if you're not taking care of that side, the side that you are working on, it's going to compound and you're going to revert backwards.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the book that I've talked about before is Cured, and I just think that that book is so amazing when it comes to mindset and just kind of how you should be approaching every day, because again, it's your choice on whether you're going to have a good day or bad. And even if physically or let's say like physically, let's say you wake up and you're just like, oh my gosh, like I can't. Let's take the worst example, when you lose your eyesight. Like that pretty much blows. Like that, like when you wake up and you cannot see, that sucks. Let's use that. What's one good thing you can look forward to that day? And if you don't have anything on the schedule, do you have friends? Do you have somebody you can call on the phone? Sometimes all it takes is a phone call, or some laughter. Laughter will make you have a good day. Something to look forward to. Yeah, it might not be something that you could do before, like you're no longer driving when you don't have your eyesight for however long that attack lasts, but you can plan something with somebody else and have them come over, and then sometimes you do have to rely on other people in times like that. You've got to have one person, and if you don't have one person, there's so many podcasts, there's so many comedians that could cheer you up. It's the little things, it's not the big, like, oh my gosh, I can't, the whole like I can't. I think that words are very important, what you say out loud. And
Yeah.
I have to. No, guess what? You get to. Somebody said that this morning. I have to go work on. He's going out to the mountain to work on the mountainside. I'm like, you have to work on a mountainside? Like, you get to. You get to see that. I would kill to be able to walk on the side of a mountain. I don't have that luxury to be able to walk on the side of a mountain. And so I think that it's just reframing the way you say things out loud. Your
Mhm.
mind listens to all of that. So,
And it's like your subconscious mind that you're not aware about. Like, a lot of
mhm.
people are not aware of their subconscious mind.
Well, it's a
And
weird word. I think subconscious is like woo woo. Like it's getting less woo woo, but still, when I hear the word subconscious, I'm like, oh, okay, but I know what it is. And so,
yeah,
and I've read about it and I've listened about it. But if you haven't, you might think that's a weird word, but it's
it's
a
pretty
real
much,
word.
it is. So a lot of people, uh, and I used to think this too. Um, our we have our mental health, right? We have our physical health, and then we have like our spiritual health, right? And so we are connected into like three different things into one entity. And because if you think about it, and this is how I kind of connected the two, is you can keep a human body alive and the mind is not there no longer. And so
Mm.
our mind has so much strength and power over our body, even though our body has its own thing that the mind can't really so much touch. But over time, it can make a big impact. So it's like a drippy faucet, right? Eventually, you're going to have your house is going to be flooded over time, right? It just takes.
Mhm.
And I think that's the hardest about especially mental health, between, our society, the way that we're raised, the way how hard we are on ourselves, like the perfection, like you need to show up as this person every single day. But looking at it inwards, like subconsciously looking at who you really are, like the person
Mhm.
that you don't want to face, like all the flaws, all the bad choices you made, along with the good choices you made. And I think that's what I see as like our subconscious of realizing who you really are. And
Mhm.
it's kind of like I'm an open book with my kids, especially mindset side. When they say they can't, I don't let them. I don't let them say I can't, because I teach them and teach them in ways of understanding what I can't means. And so it kind of like sparks like questions in their mind, like, oh, okay, like it just felt too scary, or I feel like I
Mhm.
wasn't perfect at it. So I have them answer me like, well, why can't you? And so a lot of it is they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to look
Mhm.
like a fool. And so I'm like, okay, so it just means that you have this fear behind it. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It's just because
Mhm.
these other things are coming into play, and you don't have to choose to listen to that. And it's a constant battle in our mind, because our mind can control what's going on in our body, right? The stressors, certain things, right? But with stress, we have control over that too. And we're not always going to be perfect at it. That's the thing. I think that's one thing people feel like, well, in order to get rid of stress, like I have to do all these things all the time. I just can't do that. No, like you're never going to be perfect. Like every day is a chance to be better at it, but doesn't mean that you'll ever be perfect at it. And so
Yeah.
it's just amazing just to be able to have these conversations with people, listening to others that have conversations like this, because i I never really had that. I guess probably within the last 3 years, I feel like it's kind of been a little bit more of a thing of talking about, which is great. It's definitely needed.
Yeah, and I think, did you say it's a suicide awareness month?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when it comes to stuff like that, people getting so depressed that they feel like they have no way out, that they have to kill themselves in order to make it all stop. I think a lot of that stems with you're holding on to what somebody else has done to you in the past, or how somebody else has wronged you, or I think a lot of that is you carrying that on year after year. And at the end of the day, if you do that to yourself, that other person's still winning. That other person that did that to you, they're
Mhm.
making you sick. They are making you sick. They're putting you where you're at right now because you're not releasing that. You're not saying, guess what? It happened. That's a sucky person, or, he really or she really, got away with it. Okay. Well, what's done is done. And the fact that you're still carrying that year after year after year in your psyche and in your mind, and it's making you sad and depressed, and that's kind of on you. And yes, it takes a lot of work to admit that. Um, I do think, when it comes to, let's just say, like adultery, that's like the most hurtful thing anyone could ever do to a spouse. And I do think that it took I do think that's why I got really, really sick, because I was so angry. I was so angry. So the faster you can get rid of that and realize that it's going to hurt you, not the other person. The other person's fine. That the faster you'll get well, and you won't have these suicidal thoughts, or these thoughts of, man, my life was so much better before MS. Because it doesn't have to be like that. It'll be different after your diagnosis, but it doesn't have to be. You don't know what the future brings. It could be a better life, that a life that you never thought. Like, yeah, you're not, let's say, running marathons anymore, but you don't know what's
Yeah.
up ahead. And so what you say will happen, or how crappy you say it will, that That's your reality. So,
Yeah. And the thing is,
have you read this yet?
no.
It literally is like you can't put it down. Like, I promise you, it'll be a book that you're like, and I'm not a great reader. If I'm not super engaged and if it doesn't pull me into the point, but I'm also really passionate about like spontaneous healing, and they give examples and the power of your mind. I really think that you would love this book, Cured.
I'm
By it's Dr.
you know,
Jeffrey Rediger.
yeah.
So,
Well, and the thing is, like, of course, there's always different things depending on, what's going on with someone. Like, I've had numerous family members commit suicide, and of all ages. And so it is a lot of, outside things happening. Like, what is it? 22 veterans commit suicide every single day. And
but again, why do they do that? Because they're holding on to the guilt of, let's say, like their battle buddy dying, or they screwed up on the battlefield. And so now their friend is dead and they survived, and they don't think like they're worthy, that they should be, it's their fault. Right. So it all stems back to what are they
there's,
holding on to internally?
and I think, well, and a lot of it, because men are more um, higher than women when it comes to suicide. And we do live in a society that men, I believe, is this expectation that they have to withhold all the time. And there's no, they can't like let anything down because they'll be persecuted because, oh, they're too weak or whatever
Hold
that
back
it
their
may.
emotions. Is that what
Yeah.
you mean?
Yeah. They want to be credible, like all these things, which I totally understand. But when it comes to seeing horrific things, and it takes a lot of healing, but when it comes to guilt, being, in a situation, like I know of someone who he was the sole survivor. He was a Marine. He was the sole survivor in his platoon, and he carried out every single member who died. And he hiked, I think it was 6 miles each way to bring them home.
Wow.
And he was very he's going through a lot of emotions like this. The things that you see, I tell my husband, we live in a day and age that we have so many incredible people taking the pledge to protect our communities, that have that shield, that we don't see that horrific side of accidents and deaths and all these things. And when it impacts us, it's hard because it's not something, our ancestors generation, like my great 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 grandmother, her generation, like they buried their dead, they took care of their dead. Like my grandmother, well, my great great grandmother, my grandfather died in the middle of winter and she couldn't get to town, so she buried him in the snow. And so in thawed spring, she loaded him up in the wagon and took him to town and buried him. And so it's just really, I'm very grateful to live in a time that we have people who protect us, that we don't have to see those things on the daily basis. But those people who are seeing those on the daily basis are the ones who are being impacted the most. But I do agree, coming back to like your mindset, like taking care of your mental health, the way that you're thinking, the things that you're letting in is so vital in understanding, okay, why am I letting this in? Like, do I need to let this in? Do I need to like put a shield up and not let it impact me? But over time, like what you're saying, like you have to become aware of that, because if not, you are going to feel so crumbling down. And I can't imagine being in that place whatsoever. I felt depressed before, but I've never gotten to that extent before.
Yeah, but I do think there's a lot of people like that. They go to work and then they come home. I mean, I see it. I see it in an organization I run. And I'm not saying that everybody's depressed and that's why nobody comes to things anymore, but a lot of people go to work, they come home and they do not leave their home. They do not
It's
leave their house.
a repeat cycle. It's like wake up, go to work, come home, eat, go to bed. Like, and then you
And
feel like, what's life then? I'm just on this constant repeat. But we forget that when we get to come home, we get to go and work on our dreams, our passions, the things that we want to do. And a lot of people don't do that.
No, a lot. And so I do think that mental health is a huge thing right now. And I do. And as far as, breaking free from that and not letting it get so bad that you're to the point of, let's say, suicide, is when you're depressed, guess what the best thing is for depression? Making yourself get out and do something, whether
Yeah.
that's forcing yourself to go, let's say, I don't know, go walk around in Walmart. Just be around people. Just be around other humans for 5 minutes. Start with 5 minutes.
Mhm.
Just force yourself, and especially if you have people asking you and inviting you. Sometimes I don't wanna go, but I'm also not depressed. Like, I feel like so I don't know. I think that it all goes back to what you were saying of evaluating internally kind of what you're doing to yourself sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, and is
And
that
I
healthy?
Yeah, and I do this on the daily. Like I've gotten to the point that every time when I wake up, I look, the day before what happened, what's going on, the collective as a whole. Then I'm like, okay, this is what I'm doing today. Like
Mhm.
I don't.
And sometimes you force yourself, don't you? You don't want to.
It's all the time. And there's days that when I wake up and I could barely even move, and I'm like, you know what? I need to get up. I need to
Yep.
move. I need to, I have routines. I have kids and stuff, but I'm like, I want to show my kids, like, even though you're going to deal with hard things in life, your body may absolutely hate you, but you can still get up and do something good for yourself. Which in turn, when you do that, it makes you be like, okay, who can I help today? Like, what could I do
Mhm.
for like I have a new neighbor and we're gonna cook some homemade sourdough banana bread and we're gonna take it over to them and welcome to the neighborhood. So and
Mhm.
it's I always wonder like if people like still do that. I don't know.
They did for
But
me when I moved here. Yeah.
well, that's our case.
I think
Yeah.
people still do it. The older
I
generation still does it. I don't know if people your our age still do it. So it probably make them feel very, very, very good. Yeah. Yeah.
I hope so.
Or that you're some weirdo, like, "Oh god, stay away from that girl. She
I'm gonna go
that
back
girl
and forth.
that girl wants to be social. Oh god."
Isn't that
Anyway,
a
all right. Well, we'll wrap this up, but yeah, I think that I don't know. I just think that that's something to be aware of when you're managing MS.
and you
Is
have a
is
choice?
you have a choice. You do have a choice. The choice might be a little different, but you still have choices.
Yeah.
Um,
Always a
so
choice.
yeah. All right. Well, we are on Spotify. We're on iTunes. Find us, like us, give us a review. And of course, as always, if you ran across this and you're not managing MS, but you're like, oh my gosh, my cousin does, or oh my gosh, my, sister-in-law might like what these girls have to say. Share our episodes, and we're here every week. I don't know if we're gonna be here with three blondes, but we somebody will be here once a week to chit chat about our journey. So thanks for
Hey,
joining.
yes, thank you.
All right. See ya.
Bye.